I still remember that school trip like a blurred nightmare that refuses to fade. It was supposed to be a 3-day excursion to a quiet hillside village in northern Bangladesh, a place none of us had heard of before. Our history teacher, Mr. Raman, said the area was rich in forgotten culture and mysterious legends, perfect for our final year project. We were excited, obviously. Anything that meant no classes and a chance to hang out away from home was welcomed with open arms. The bus ride started early in the morning. Everyone was half asleep, wrapped in their hoodies, earphones plugged in. I sat by the window, watching the city dissolve into green fields and foggy roads. Around noon, the roads narrowed, winding through dense woods. There were no signs, no people, not even animals, just endless trees and that strange, heavy silence. Even the birds seemed to have vanished. The driver, an old man with a voice like sandpaper, muttered something under his breath as we crossed a rusted bridge. I leaned forward to hear, but he stopped speaking when he noticed me listening. That was the first thing that made my skin crawl. We finally arrived at the lodge, an old 2-story wooden building with faded red paint peeling off the walls. It looked abandoned, like no one had stayed there in years. There were cobwebs near the entrance, and the front door creaked like it was in pain. Mr. Rahman assured us it was all part of the authentic experience. Inside, the rooms were basic: bunk beds, dim lighting, and old portraits of people whose eyes seemed to follow you no matter where you stood. My roommate, Sammy, joked about one of the portraits moving its head. I laughed at the time, but later that night, I couldn't stop staring at that same painting. Around dusk, I decided to explore the back of the lodge. There was a path leading into the woods, marked by a crooked wooden sign. The letters were faded, but I could barely make out the word Shumadir, or something like that. I turned to ask Mr. Rahman about it, but he wasn't around. Strangely, none of the teachers were. Back at the lodge, dinner was quiet. No one seemed as excited as they had been earlier. Sami said he had heard whispers outside our window. Another girl claimed her phone kept turning on by itself, showing old photos she never took. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling like something wasn't right. The wind outside howled like it was in pain, and the trees cast shadows across the walls that didn't quite match their shapes. Just before I finally drifted off to sleep, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, and too heavy to be one of us kids. They stopped right outside our door. And then, silence. I woke up to the sound of something scratching, slow, dragging nails across wood. My eyes darted to the door, but it was closed. Sammy was asleep, his face turned toward the wall. I held my breath and listened. The sound was coming from under the bed. My heart started pounding. I didn't move, just stared at the floor. Then, without warning, it stopped. I waited for what felt like forever, before slowly leaning over the edge of the bed. I didn't see anything underneath, just shadows. The next morning, I didn't mention it to anyone. Maybe it was a rat. Maybe my mind was playing tricks. But breakfast that day felt off. Everyone looked tired, dark circles under their eyes, barely speaking. One of the girls, Ruba, didn't come downstairs at all. Her friend Lamia said she hadn't spoken a word since waking up. She said she saw someone, Lamia whispered to me, outside the window last night. A man standing there, just staring. That sent a chill through my body. We were on the second floor. There was no balcony, no ledge, just the thick drop into the woods below. Later, while everyone was out near the bonfire pit, I stayed back to grab my hoodie. On the way to my room, I passed by the narrow hallway that led to the attic stairs. The door was always locked. But today, it was open just a crack. I don't know why, but I walked toward it. The air grew colder the closer I got. A low creaking sound came from above, like someone pacing slowly in the attic. I reached out and pushed the door gently. It opened with a moan. Darkness, pitch-black stairs led up into the attic. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel something, like the shadows were watching me. I turned and hurried back to the others without looking behind me. That night, we all gathered around the campfire outside. Mr. Rahman tried to lighten the mood with ghost stories, but no one laughed. Everyone kept glancing into the woods. It was too quiet. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just the crackle of the fire. Then suddenly, Ruba screamed. We all turned to see her standing at the edge of the trees, pointing. "He's there!" she cried. "He was standing right there." We rushed over, flashlights aimed at the forest. But there was nothing. Just trees, unmoving and silent. Mr. Rahman pulled her away, muttering that she was probably just stressed or imagining things. But when I looked at the spot she pointed to, I swear I saw something. A shape, tall, thin, melt into the darkness like smoke. That night, no one slept well. The windows seemed to rattle on their own, and around 3 a.m., I heard it again. Scratching, not under the bed this time, from inside the walls. The scratching in the walls didn't stop that night. It moved, from one end of the room to the other, slow and deliberate, like something was crawling inside. Sammy sat up in his bed at one point and looked at me, wide-eyed. "You hear that too?" he whispered. I nodded. Neither of us moved. We just sat there frozen, waiting for it to stop. The next morning, we learned that Ruba was gone. Her bed was empty, no note, no sign of where she went. Mr. Rahman claimed she probably wandered off early, maybe to get some fresh air, but none of us believed that. Her phone was still on the nightstand, and her shoes were under the bed. Lamia burst into tears. "She said it would come for her," she sobbed. "She kept saying it wanted her to follow." That's when things began to spiral. One of the boys, Tarek, said he saw someone watching him through the bathroom mirror. "It wasn't me," he said. "It was my reflection, but it smiled when I didn't." People started refusing to be alone. We stayed in groups, even just to go to the hallway. The teachers didn't seem to notice, or they were pretending not to. Mr. Rahman looked paler every day, and one night I saw him talking in the woods. Alone. By the second night, the lodge felt sick. The walls looked darker. The lights flickered constantly. One of the girls found handprints on her bedsheet. Tiny, dark smudges like ash. That night, we locked all the windows, all the doors. I barely slept, too afraid to close my eyes. Around midnight, Sami shook me awake. "Look," he whispered, pointing at the window. There, behind the glass, stood a figure, tall, impossibly thin, face covered in shadow. It didn't move. It just stared. And then, it smiled. I grabbed my phone and snapped a photo out of instinct, but when I checked, the screen showed only static. No figure, no window, just white noise. We screamed, ran to Mr. Rahman's room, but he wasn't there. His bed was untouched. That's when we heard the attic door creak open above us. Slow footsteps followed. Something was coming down. We didn't wait. We grabbed what we could and ran outside into the woods, calling out for the teachers, for help. Anyone. But there was no one. The trees closed in, and the lodge behind us disappeared into the fog like it had never been there. And then we heard it, a voice, calling our names from all directions. We ran through the forest, branches tearing at our clothes, roots snagging our feet. The voices behind us didn't stop. They weren't loud, just soft, familiar, and cold. They sounded like our friends, our teachers. Even our own voices echoed from the shadows, begging us to turn around. But we didn't. The fog grew thicker, and soon we could barely see more than a few feet ahead. Sammy held onto my arm like his life depended on it. I remember his grip was ice cold, even though we were both sweating from fear and exhaustion. After what felt like hours, we found a clearing. A broken fence lined the edge, and beyond that, a road. The old cracked pavement looked like salvation. We bolted toward it, and just as we reached the edge, I turned around. The forest behind us was gone. I swear it. The trees, the fog, the path, all vanished like smoke. In its place was just empty land. A rusty pickup truck came down the road, and we flagged it down like maniacs. The driver, an old man, looked shocked to see us. He said no one had used that lodge in over 20 years. That the school trip must have been a mistake, because the place was shut down after. What happened back then? He didn't explain, and we didn't ask. When we returned to Dhaka, the school claimed no such trip was ever approved. The administration insisted the lodge had burned down years ago. They even showed us pictures, blackened ruins, nothing left but ash, and a collapsed roof. I tried to contact the others. Some never came back. Sami stopped talking entirely, dropped out, disappeared. Lamia was hospitalized after claiming Ruba still talks to her every night. I went to visit her once. She didn't recognize me, but she kept whispering one thing over and over. He never left. I still have that photo on my phone, the one I took that night. It won't open anymore. Just crashes every time I try. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, the screen lights up by itself. And for a second, I swear I see it. That smile, watching me, waiting.